Welcome to Can't Stop the Pop, the podcast where we, that's me, Matty,
and me, Craig,
do a deep dive on a song from the 90s or noughties.
So, Matty, my Northern Star, what song are we doing this week?
We are doing Melanie C, I Turn to You. Oh, wow. So, what are your immediate thoughts?
It's making me want to go back to the year 2000, go to Ibiza, and dance on a sweaty, hot, drunken dance floor. That's what it immediately makes me think of. But before we get into it, who is Melanie C, and why are we talking about this song?
Who is Melanie C? Wow. Well, Melanie C was a member of the very niche, very small group, you might have heard of them, called the Spice Girls. And so she was a member of the Spice Girls. She was Sporty Spice. And this was a song that was released from her debut album, Northern Star. And it was released on the 7th of August, 2000. Am I correct there?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Cool, stunning. We got Craig with the stats, so I never want to get it wrong. It was released 7th of August 2000. It was the 4th single off her album campaign for Northern Star and her 5th single as a solo Spice Girl. And it was a number one. It was massive. And it really felt like a moment in pop music and a real moment for her. What do you think of the song, Craig?
I mean, I think we have to talk about the song that most people know is not the same song that is on the Northern Star album. I mean, it is the same song, but the version on the album, the original version, is almost 6 minutes long, and structurally it's the same. Nothing was cut out for the single, but it's a sort of like, it's quite orchestral, but it's much darker. It's got this almost sort of, I don't, how would you describe, like an indie type vibe. It reminds me of something that might have been on an indie Kylie album.
You've hit the nail on the head there. This song, I think, is a direct reference. You mentioned Indie Kylie as an Impossible Princess. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But the original album version, for me, it sounds like it's from Madonna Ray of Light. It sounds like Frozen. It sounds like The Power of Goodbye. It sounds like Sky Meets Heaven. In that it's orchestral, it's got tribal drums in the background, it's got a drive to it, it's dark, it is very much kind of Ibiza chill, but still ethereal in the orchestral version of it. The original song is amazing as a way that it flows on the album. And I do think that there could have been a single mix of that maybe beefed it up a bit.
Yeah.
But what we got in the single version, in the Hex Hector remix, is incredible. Like, the way to turn a really good song into a real moment of pop music. I'm going to make a real bold statement here.
You never.
In that I feel like it's such a moment in pop music. And I think this is the Spice Girl solo single that rivals the Spice Girl songs the most. Not isn't it probably is my favorite song. I don't mean that this is the best one. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
But I mean, as a moment in pop music, you have to think about this early 2000 Ibiza club scene. There was a real thing about, like Clubland collaborations and compilations that were coming out at that time.
Yeah.
And remixes of songs were very, very, very heavy and common and getting a lot of rotation. And the video, everything about it perfectly encapsulates that young girl in your 20s going to Ibiza. And I think that's the reason why it was so big. I think you saw it in the styling that she's got in the video. I know I've skipped it forward a bit, but that's my statement. In my statement, I think that this is the biggest pop moment that any of the Spice Girls had as a solo song.
I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said there, and it's almost like you stole my notes. I mean, the Spice Girls were, at the point this was released, the Spice Girls either were in the process of or had finished recording Forever. And I don't think you could, at this point, this was like that moment when Beyonce rejoined Destiny's Child to release Destiny Fulfilled, and you're like, one of them is now such a big star. There's an imbalance in what there was before, and I think you're right. I was 14 at the time, and so I hadn't been to Ibiza. I what I knew of Ibiza was what I saw through TV and through those Clubland compilations that popped up. They were like Chilled Ibiza, Sunset Ibiza. They were everywhere. And this was summer of 2000. And I think what the Hex Hector remix does is it presents a very commercial but very authentic sounding version of what you thought was going on over in Ibiza. I could well imagine. I'm not convinced this song would ever have filled a dance floor in Ibiza, but it could have done. It was believable that it would have done to a 14-year-old. It was entirely believable that this is the sort of thing that was happening over in that mystical land of Ibiza. So it was so on trend. You know, we've got to say, the Venga Boys released "We're Going to Ibiza" the previous year, sorry, in 1999. But this for me is I just thought, really nailed the sound. I mean, there was always going to have to be a radio edit. The 6-minute version was never going to go to radio. And I think for a lot of people, this would be the big single from the album, the one that people really remember.
Totally. This is also still so lots to unpack from what you've just said and I'm sorry for stealing your notes, but the thing is that yes, they would never have released the original version, but the original version sounds like it would have been on Chilled Ibiza, whereas the radio edit feels like it is nighttime Ibiza. And I love that. I love that you've got these two versions of the song. And this is probably the song that people remember most. This is still a song that she ends a lot of her concerts and her gigs with because it's such a crowd pleaser. There was 2 number ones off Northern Star, and the other is obviously Never Be the Same Again with Lisa Left Eye Lopez, God rest her soul. And I feel like this, because it's her solo song, is the one that people remember more, and definitely is she reveres it and loves performing it. A couple of things on the song that I just really, really like. For the record, I really love Mel C's solo work. I love that this album was so big before the Spice Girls even released their 3rd album. Like you've just said it, it did. It might seem a bit silly to people looking back at it now, but the comparison of like Beyonce rejoining Destiny's Child is so there. It's so there. Like, I love that this song, her vocals are so isolated. I don't think to my ear it sounds like there's anyone else's backing vocals on this. Her vocal is pure, it's on its own, it's isolated, and anytime it's in a harmony, she's harmonizing with herself in the most brilliant way. No one else gets in the way of her. I also love that vocally, Mel C never really loses her gorgeous Scouse accent in anything she does. It's true. I used to say this, me and my mum used to say this all the time when we listen to her. I just love that you can still tell where she's from when she sings.
Yeah.
And I really just think that her vocals are brilliant on it. It's such a fantastic build. That middle 8 in the radio edit where
so good.
she just, if you never help me through, and it builds and builds, and then it goes into this trance beat that is also mixed in with these incredible strings. I bring it back to the whole Ray of Light comparison. It really surprises me that William Orbit had nothing to do with it, because he helped with one of the songs on the album, but had nothing to do with this track. Because the influence of, anyone that knows me knows that I revere Ray of Light. I think it's my favorite pop album ever, and I feel like the influence that had on so many other artists at the time. I think of people like All Saints. I think of people like Pink. I think of people this song in particular. There was such an influence of using those three layers of techno, tribal drums, and orchestral strings. It was just such the perfect mash to make a great pop song. But yeah, I don't know what else there is to say about the song. It's just, for me, it's such a mic drop pop moment.
Yeah, it really is. If I had one thing about the remix, I love the remix. I appreciate what it did for the song and what it did to make it a hit single. Spoiler alert, that it was a hit. But I think the only thing that you lose slightly is the quality of the songwriting, because although it's all the same lyrics, it's all still there, but the album version, I really feel you get a sense of the lyrics and that what she was conveying about being sort of enraptured by this love. And I do think that by turning it into a dance hit, which is what many people will see it as, you do lose a little bit of that, but it is still there. And I think that the bit, as you just said, the bit where that most comes through is the bit where it's most exposed, which is the breakdown, when you really, it's really touching, and it's just really beautifully performed. And that quality is there throughout the album version, and it's a little bit less so. Like, Hex Hector does do some echoed vocals. There's a bit of reverb on the vocals. It's not distorted, but it's flourished. The flourishes are there that make it a hit single.
I think it's a brilliantly written song. On paper, the lyrics are beautiful. That lyric of the chorus, "I turn to you like a flower leading towards the sun," that's so beautifully poetic. And she co-wrote the song. And I feel like people need to really give Mel C the credit that she deserves. I'm not going to get on my high horse about it, but I think she is really, really one of the top, like, pop females that we've had. You've got to look at the breadth of her discography is massive. And quite a lot of the records that she released in the middle of her career, she released independently as well. And she was writing and co-producing so much of her own stuff. And I really, really love that her career has kind of had a really reflourish with the last album that she released, Melanie C. I just really, really rate her as an artist, as a songwriter, and as a live performer. She's a cracking vocalist. I've seen her live in her own gigs. I've also seen her in musicals, and she's fantastic. It's just such brilliant song. I don't want to keep going around in circles just saying that, but
I will just
truly is.
My final little takeaway from the song itself is, I do remember dancing to this in a club and singing it at the top of my voice.
What?
And I know, and screaming at the top of my voice. Well, because the music was loud and I wanted to try and keep up, screaming out, "My insides are erect with anxiety." And my friend looked at me and was like, "That's not the words, and don't shout that out." Like, I was singing that loud in a club that she heard me sing it, and she was like, "That's wrong. Don't know." So my insides are no longer erect with anxiety.
Someone else was erect inside. So let's talk about the video. Let's talk about the video. Because I feel like, just to put it out there, I feel like this video perfectly matches with the song.
Oh
I
god,
don't think I don't really have any notes. Like, it's so good. I feel like one thing I did right in the I love that the video starts with this slight shuddering of the water.
Yes.
Because obviously it's meant to be the base. It's the base of Ibiza coming towards you. But for me, it just read as Jurassic Park. Just like of the boom, boom, like the water ripples. That's just my silly little take. I love this video. It's basically just, whoa, we're going to Ibiza. We're dancing. There's a slight through line of a story of it's her on the rocks on her own, but then slowly people build and build and build. They come to her in the club. They come to her on the rocks. At some bizarre moment, they go to a forest, which I feel is a bit like a walk home after party. But then the idea is that at the same moment in the club, the forest, the cliffs, the sun comes up, and it's the new day, and that's kind of it. But I just love that the dancing never becomes a dance routine. That felt so pointed and specific that it could have very easily in the dance break become a hair toss Britney style routine, and it never does. It's just her, no inhibitions, singing and dancing, and it's a brilliant video. Love it.
Yeah, it's really well filmed. There's a lot of sped up sequences, and that gives it again that quite ethereal sense that it's you're watching it, but something's not quite right about it. And and I love that the when the sun comes up, those shots are stunning. And I would also say I think a big part of what helped this song connect was her styling, because I think we've talked before about the styling during the Northern Star era was very. It started off by making a big point about I'm not Sporty Spice, I'm not a Spice Girl anymore. I've cut my hair off. I'm it was, and then now on the fourth single you have sort of the longer hair. It's crimped. It's really nice. She looks great, but I think as it from an image perspective, it's just a little bit softer, and it was just nice. Yeah. I think that helped sell it a little bit more.
It was relatable. The look that she has in this video is the most relatable look of any that she had for that album, because she very pointedly cut her hair short, was very slightly, I don't want to use it's a very old term now, but it was slightly tomboyish sort of vibe that she brought to some of the videos, especially going down. Northern Star was very sort of demure, I'm outside, but quite closed off. And this felt like a real breath of fresh air into an album campaign, which had actually been quite dark, when the Northern Star album is quite diverse in its style. It isn't all doom and gloom. Like, I really like it. And I just love it. Like, I really, really do. I also, I did write about, it's the forest shots that I find quite strange. I rewatched it and I was like, oh, where's she in the forest? But then I thought, I was like, no, this is the classic thing of we've reached the third act of the song and they've added in a new place for us to be in some shots that were there. It's just brilliantly filmed, and I do feel like this is going to sound like a really random comparison. But you know how people have constantly, in this past year or so, it can't have even passed you by. I know you're an alien for modern pop culture. But when people have said things like, oh my God, it's a Brat summer, because it was that vibe of Charlie XCX's sort of like laid back, it's just a crop top and a jeans style, but we're going to make it high fashion. I definitely felt there was an element of that Ibiza look that you had. The girls, the look that they would go for at this time was, it was laid back. It was a pair of shorts and a crop t-shirt. It
Yeah.
wasn't super sexualized. It wasn't super high fashion. It was just comfort, long hair,
Yeah.
great tan, and that style stands out on this album because it doesn't fit any of the other singles. And that
Yeah.
style seeped into a lot of pop culture, and the style of the song encapsulated a pop moment, which is why I said the whole thing about it feeling like the biggest solo Spice Girl pop moment that any of them had had. It's just such like a lightning in the bottle moment with the video, with the song, the styling, with everything. I love it. I love it. Any more we want to say in the video before we get to the stats?
No, because we all loved it, and yeah, we can talk about the chart stats.
I honestly, I worship it. I think it's great. Right, so that is what we think. We love it, obviously. But what happened when this song was released? Tell me about the song. Tell me about the album campaign and the sort of breadth of that.
Okay, so this debuted at number 1. It sold 121,000 copies in its first week. So it was a big, like, for a fourth single from an album, even one that's been remixed. That was a big hit, and it was the 27th bestseller of the year. So this was a big hit, and she re-released the Northern Star album after this because you had the radio edit of Never Be the Same Again, and obviously this radio edit was so different. I think it was the right decision to re-release the album and just put the 2 extra tracks on there, because imagine hearing this song, going out and buying Northern Star and hearing the original. They're so different. It's not even like a slight change. So I think it was absolutely the right decision. Re-release the album. The album went up to number 4, so that was its peak. That was the highest it had been. And yeah, I think it really cemented having a number 1 hit and then a new peak for the album in a short space of time. Really cemented this as the high point of the Northern Star campaign. I think this is really where it all came together perfectly. And it just, in some respects, I think it is a bit of a shame that they then had to sort of switch suddenly, and she had to start thinking about Forever with the Spice Girls, because then you're going from this into Holler with a few months later. And one of the things that now we do this sometimes. We say things and we're not sure if we've made it up, but I think this is true. Correct me if I'm wrong. When the Spice Girls came back together to release Forever, a conscious decision was made that they all had to be styled differently from their solo projects. So that's why Melanie B had the long hair for her solo campaign, and then short curly hair for Forever, and that's why Melanie C had short hair. And so the styling, and Victoria Beckham had long hair for one and short hair for other things. So the styling had to be different. And you go from this I Turn to You, where the styling was so good and so right, into Forever, and it just felt like, they're trying to put her back in this box, and she's out of the box now. She's musically, visually, creatively, she's out of the box now. She can't put back in there to do Holler. That's how I felt.
I feel like a lot of people probably, if they're more casual pop fans, don't know that the Spice Girls went headfirst into solo projects really before the third album, which is why there was a gap between Goodbye and Holler. And I feel like there's a lot we could do a whole episode on the Forever album and what went wrong and what went right with the Spice Girls' third album. But you can't get away from the fact that the solo project went full throttle. And also, this is a group in which all 5 members launched solo careers that all had hits and all had big hits. And let's say 3 of them went on to have quite longevity of careers, and Melanie C has released so many albums, and I feel like you can't underestimate how big a deal it was. The fact that 4 out of the 5 of them had a #1 hit, and some of them have had multiple #1 hits. Melanie C has Mel had 2. Like, I'm gonna get this wrong here. Mel has had 2. Emma had 1. Melanie B had 1. Jerry has had 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
I said that really patronisingly. Sorry. Yeah,
I was correct.
Well done, you.
Yay! I quote stats and I get nervous because you know everything. But that's an impressive amount of #1s, and I just think I feel for Melanie C, because if she hadn't have had to go back into the Spice Girls for forever, I think she could have launched into a second album campaign really strong, and it would have been just as big, if not bigger, than Northern Star. Whereas because she had to then go into the Forever campaign, it then really put her second album on the back burner, which, if you, we're not here to discuss it, but was very troubled and essentially basically lost her record deal, which is a massive shame because there was great songs on it, but it was a bit of a confused campaign. And I don't think that would have happened if she could have just continued her solo trajectory. But at the same time, they needed to give the Spice Girls a third album so that they could kind of cap off the career and give them the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Brits and do all that and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I have to say, taking the Spice Girls out of the equation, I suppose one of the big compliments about how big the Northern Star album was and how big this single was is that I think people often forget there was a 5th single from the album, and it really underperformed. And I think that often gets glossed over because I just think this song was so big, and the perception of Northern Star was it was such a successful album. I don't think If That Were Me was why I just think it was the wrong single to I'm not even sure, if I'm honest. I would have released another single from the album. I don't think Northern Star needed another single. This was the perfect way to end that album campaign on a high.
If you were being clever, you would have probably added a new song on the re-release, like if you'd have been doing that sort of thing. But If That Were Me, it's kind of a bit of a limp song, and it's not really one that she's ever going to perform again. Whereas there's other songs like, Go and like Gaga that she would have been great singles. Singles? I just created a new word. Song and single is a single. But yeah, I forget there's a 5th single all the time. For me, what I found always baffling about Northern Star as an album is that, and it was probably a contractual thing, but I don't understand why When You're Gone with Bryan Adams wasn't on the album. Because if it had been something now, there would be no way that collaboration, which was a big hit and her first solo song, wouldn't have been somehow pushed into the album.
Yeah.
Whereas it was a time, I think, when record companies, it was quite difficult to do that with physical releases. Am I wrong?
No, I actually wrote about When You're Gone earlier this year, and I suspect there are 2 reasons why it's not on the album. The first is the single wasn't released through Virgin, so they would have had to license it onto the album, and they probably didn't want to do that. But also, I feel like Melanie C had a really strong creative vision for Northern Star, and When You're Gone, I love When You're Gone. It's a great song, but it doesn't fit on Northern Star. You're right. Most record labels would try and shove it on there anyway, stick it on at the end as a bonus track. But I feel like creatively, she might have said, "Love the song, loved working with Bryan Adams, but that's not my sound, and that's not the sound of this album." So I'm glad creatively that it's not on there. But you're right, very bizarre that you have a song as big as that's not on a Melanie C album.
I'm just thinking now as well. Is Northern Star? It's the 25th anniversary this year, isn't it? Because it's 2000.
Yes.
Or was it 99?
99. But there was a vinyl re-release.
There was. I was just thinking about like whether it was time for like a Melanie C hits collection. I don't know. They're not as popular anymore, but they do still happen. Yeah. It's 26 years. Wow. Oh, okay. Well, if you want to listen to I Turn to You, and particularly the Hex Hector single remix, the radio edit, you can find it on all streaming platforms. And where can they find us, Craig?
Okay, so Can't Stop the Pop has a website where there are over 500 reviews, including this song, which you can find at can'tstopthepop.com.
We are also on social media. I am Matt_Atkins9 on Instagram. And you can also find us on TikTok at Can't Stop the Pop Podcast, where we basically do this, but in 60-second clips.
It's so hard to do it in 60 seconds. Okay, I am at can'tstop_the-pop on Instagram and TikTok. We're also Can't Stop the Pop on YouTube. So check us out because we've got some video content and other episodes on there.
Do subscribe to the channels. Get in touch, let us know what you think of this song, let you know what you think of the show, and please leave us a review, but only a good one, wherever you get your podcasts from.
It's surprising that instruction really works. Thank you so much for listening, and join us next time for more
Can't Stop the Pop.